Hey there, how's it going? This is James Tripp. This is a video for James Tripp Chaos Wave. Title of this video is Cognitive Restructuring versus Personal Power. Now this is an imperfect title, but it's a good enough fit to cover the question that I've been asked here. Somebody's asked me to put some energy on a topic. This came in by email, by the way. I encourage people to ask me questions, but please do make use of the comments section to ask anything you want to ask and give any feedback that you want to give. I'm going to definitely get to it more quickly, more easily if it turns up in the comments section rather than in the chaos of my inbox. So the question that I have been asked runs thus. Hey James, sorry for the long post. There's a recurring pattern that I've noticed in myself for quite some time now, and it's been getting in the way. I would really appreciate your perspective on it. Two examples would be, I've wanted to learn Muay Thai, and I think it's an interesting martial art, and the thought of going to a gym to train and get better every day and maybe even compete is something I'd like to do. Until I looked online and I noticed that everybody was doing it and that it was mainstream. As soon as I noticed this, I started to feel a strong urge to move away from it all. Another interest would be change work and hypnosis. I practice self-hypnosis, meditation, NLP, etc., and find it interesting that we can absorb ourselves in our thoughts and also dissociate from them. Because of this, I'm interested in and look forward to starting my own hypnotherapy practice sometime in the future. 2 days ago, everyone started posting about mental health. And just like that, I suddenly wanted to avoid something I'm passionate about. It was this strong reaction in my tummy resisting what I just saw. It's really obvious to me that the positive intention is to move away from conformity. And so I got away with simply doing reframes that's come up with different alternatives to satisfy the intention. However, the fact that it shows up in different contexts tells me there's something much deeper. Also, I started to think that doing some reframes just reinforces the system and the behavior. So what I'd like to ask is, how would you resolve and navigate your way through this issue? Okay, so I'm not going to say the name of the person who sent this because this was sent by private email rather than in the comments. But if you're watching this, you know who you are, obviously, you know you sent the message. So I'm going to address you directly with this one. Now, the first thing I'm going to say right here is the fact that you have noticed this, the fact that you are able to witness this puts you in a position of power with it. Straight off the bat, it puts you in a position of power. And please do not underestimate this position of power, because most people, they don't see what's happening. Okay, they're just so caught up in what's happening, they don't witness it. So I'm very fond of saying to people, you know, we human beings are by default very poor witnesses to our own processes. And if you want to change something, the first thing to be able to do is witness it rather than simply be swept up inside of it. So the fact that you're able to witness this, the fact that you're able to see what's going on is an excellent first starting point. Now, there's a couple of directions that I can go from here. I'm going to go in, obviously I'm going to go in one direction first and then the other direction afterwards. So let me pick this direction first. You said you tried reframes around this. And for people who are watching this who don't know what a reframe is a way of changing the sort of meanings around things so as to get a different internal response created. We create our experience of the moment from the inside out through the ideas that we bring to bear upon it unconsciously. Reframing is taking different ideas and bringing them to bear upon the situation by choice, and really bringing them to bear so that we experience and see the situation differently. When we see the situation differently, we experience it differently, i.e. different senses, different sensations, different feelings, and we see different choices available to us. So that's basically how reframing works. It's re-meaning the situation. So the fact that you, the author of this, is able to step back and do some of that is really great. Now, you also mentioned the idea of the positive intention inside of this. The positive intention, what did you say here? You said the positive intention is to move away from conformity, I think you said. I'm not seeing it because it's a reasonably long message. So you've gone with this method of finding new ways to realize that positive intention of moving away from conformity. Here's my upgrade that I would suggest to you. I would question the positive intention. Okay? So if moving away from conformity for you here would be what I call an anti-value. Okay, people talk about values and a lot in life, they don't talk about anti-values, they talk about values in NLP, okay? So a value might be something like, I don't know, freedom. There's a classic value. So people move towards freedom, okay? For somebody else, a value might be challenge, might be a value. So a person, when they see a challenge, they move towards it. But for somebody else, challenge might be what I call an anti-value, which is something that somebody moves away from. So I think it's really useful to start to notice your values and anti-values, the drivers. And what you've got here, you could say, it's one way of rendering this up conceptually, that conformity is an anti-value for you. So you can go, right, I'm moving away from conformity. I want to find other ways to move away from conformity. Now, what you haven't questioned here is that the positive intention is valid. Okay? Now, what I mean by this is a lot of people, in NLP, there's an idea of eliciting your values. You hear that a lot, a values elicitation process. What you don't hear much is, do you want to change your values? Right? Do you want to change the drivers that are driving your life? Instead of trying to realize those drivers in different ways, which is what you've tried to do here, what I would invite you to do is recognize that you can change your drivers. You are not your values. You are indeed the author of your values. You may not know that because you would have authored them unconsciously and under the influence of other human beings as you were growing up. But that does not render you powerless in terms of transforming and changing your own value systems. You can change your values. Now this brings me to the title of the video. Cognitive restructuring versus personal power. Okay? Now, I've been in the self-transformation game for a long time. And initially I sort of stumbled in and found my way in through philosophy, Western philosophy. And that wasn't very satisfactory, and then I studied some Eastern philosophy, and that was better, that was more useful through the martial arts. Ultimately I came to hypnosis and NLP, or not ultimately, in fact, many years ago I came to hypnosis and NLP. This was stuff that really started to make a difference for me. NLP, I have a lot of love for NLP. I can critique it to high heaven, but I have a lot of love for NLP because it was seriously game-changing material for me. However, it kind of snake charmed me even further into a certain belief that never got questioned, and that's that people are their patterns, right? I used to do this piece in talks I would give. I'd say people are patterned. They walk the way they walk, talk the way they talk, and think the way they think. And all the time it was about these unconscious patterns for me, and of course in order to change the results we got in our lives, we had to change the unconscious patterns. And there's a lot of validity to this perspective. I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm saying there's a lot of validity to it. However, it lures us away from other options, other renderings. So I don't know when it was, about 2013, I hired myself a guy called Steve Chandler to coach me and mentor me in some things because he'd impressed me with a live workshop I'd attended. And one of the things that Steve said to me early on was this. He said, stop identifying with your history. Stop identifying with your personality. Stop identifying with your patterns. Start identifying with the I that chooses. Now, this was a new concept to me, the I that chooses. I was so much acting like I didn't have that much influence with my unconscious patterns that I hadn't thought much about the I that chooses. And I found that the I that chooses, especially when you develop the I that chooses, Okay, the I that chooses is an I that can be developed. And by the way, I want to make this really clear. You see, because NLP and hypnosis are very much against using conscious choice to struggle against unconscious patterns, the I that chooses does not struggle against unconscious patterns. The I that chooses develops skills and capacities to make choices and to find out where choice is and where choice lies. So I think I've done a video on this before, circumstances versus choice. I have a very simple model of life in many ways. I have no interest in struggling against anything. So anything that I cannot immediately change with a click of my fingers, I treat as circumstances. Okay, I don't struggle to change anything. But I'm aware that within all circumstances, there are always a myriad of choice points, often an infinite number of choice points. We just don't see them. So I'm not interested in struggling against circumstances. I'm interested in finding choice and power within circumstances. Now, when I say circumstances here, I'm not just talking about the external circumstances of your life. I'm talking about the internal circumstances of your psyche, which will include your values sets. Okay, so if your current values are part of your internal circumstances, whereabouts is choice? So, here's what I would suggest to you. I'm going to give you some out and out advice. Now, I'm not claiming that this advice that I'm about to give has all the details that you will personally need to execute this advice, should you choose to do so, and that is your choice. Because we're dealing with things that have some subtleties in here. So I'm going to give you a sort of bare bones of this one. The first thing I would recommend that you do is identify with the I that chooses. When you step back from this, clearly you've written this email from a place that says, I'm witnessing a pattern, and actually, I don't want that pattern. I can see that that's not serving me. So let's say the I that chooses can see the pattern isn't serving you. But what you've done at the moment is you've gone, well, what are the positive intentions? i.e., what's the drivers? What are the driver values? What you have not questioned yet is that those must remain. Here's the big question. Where is everywhere in your life that avoiding conformity is getting in the way of you getting what you want? Right? That's the kind of question I would ask myself. Where is X showing up and getting in the way of me of me having the life that I want? It's keeping me from having the life that I want. So your avoidance of conformity here is getting in the way of you doing some really cool stuff, right? And here's the thing. Whatever you do as a Muay Thai person, as a change work person, ultimately the aim of the game is to make it come alive uniquely inside of you, by the way. It is not to fit yourself to the mold of Muay Thai or change work or hypnosis or whatever. It's not like an outside mold that you have to mold yourself to. You take that stuff and you have it come alive uniquely within you. So actually, I would say conformity is not a risk, okay? When you see it like this, when you understand it like this, okay? Am I a conformist because NLP is alive in me? Or some of the DNA of NLP has changed me? Does that make me a conformist? No, because the expression of NLP is unique within me. So conformity, I'd say it's not really an issue. However, I'm not suggesting that you dodge it. I'm suggesting that you look at it and go, how does this work in my life? How does this driver play out? And what do I want to do about it? Do I want to continue to be driven by this particular driver? Right? And if you don't, you want to change your relationship with conformity and what conformity means. If you want to change a value, the clue is in the name value, or an anti-value, okay? A value is a thing that you value. So you don't value conformity. In fact, you move away from it. How would it be if you did value it? What options, what opportunities would it create for you if you were capable of valuing, if you were capable of using conformity? Right? When is conforming a superpower? When is conforming a superpower? Okay, conforming is a powerful thing. A lot of the time, if I go on YouTube, by the way, and I look up various keywords, there are certain keywords that are trending at the moment. All right? If I want to connect out to the world, it's useful to speak the conversation that people are already having inside of their head. So it's useful for me to use the trending language and to conform with that. Right? Conforming. You're a hypnotist, right? Heard of pacing and leading? What's pacing and leading? Pacing and leading is conforming with something, pacing, and then taking it in a different direction. If you don't blend with something, if you don't join with something, you can't lead something. Okay, so I'm not telling you this is the way it is with conformity. I'm just telling you, if I go into a process of reworking one of my values, I want to go in and choose to see it in different ways. I want to take charge of my meaning making instead of being caught up in the trap of debating internally what is or isn't so. Right? Debating internally what is or isn't so will be going, yeah, but is conformity really good? I mean, it only looks bad to me, and that's being caught up in your existing rule structures and debating about what is or isn't so with yourself. Live as a creative force from the inside of your mind out. Step into your power to re-render what conformity means, because you enjoy making differences at a deep level and seeing how they unfold out into your life, thus empowering you to actually get more of what you want instead of standing in the way of what you want. All right? Now, in a sense, this is magic. This is the essence of magic, what I call magic. Okay? I believe magic is real but not supernatural. Magic comes about when we re-render reality up here. It unfolds differently into the world. You have the power to do this, right? Now, this is not the same as cognitive restructuring, where you're superficially changing the cognitive flow and changing the sort of sequence of thoughts that you might have and all of this. This is getting right into reality shaping from the inside out. It's releasing yourself from the truth trap so you can play with the real clay of mind, imagination, of being, of seeing, the font of choice. Now, I said that I was going to give you some suggestions here and I wasn't going to give you an instruction, because this stuff I'm talking about is skilled stuff. I couldn't give you an instruction on how to win a tennis match, for example. You know, I could give you some pointers and some rules and I could help you train in tennis, but I can't give you an instruction on how to win a tennis match. This is a lot like this, but this is what I want you to know. You are not your values. So stop identifying with your values. Okay? Start identifying with the I that chooses. Recognize that you can re-author your values. You can experiment, you can explore with. I have a process called the Tetralemma. I did this really crazy thing a couple of years ago. I closed down my online store and replaced it with this one offering and all of this sort of thing, the online deep apprenticeship. And I've got all these cool things. So when I'm making videos, I think, yeah, that's what people need. They need the Tetralemma, right? You could take the Tetralemma process. You could blow out the boundary conditions on conformity. Or I think, yeah, self-hypnosis and personal alchemy, that would have a lot. I actually do have that up. Going up. Actually, I'll put a link to that because it's one of the things I do still have in the Hypnosis Without Trance store, and I'm going to be moving it to James Tripp online shortly. Yeah, but the top level here is you have more power than you probably realize to really get in and work at that deeper level. In a sense, it's not that different from reframing. You're just dropping through. All right, or whatever level you're reframing, look at the presuppositions and just drop through to the level of those, the underpinnings. Right? I'm always into dropping through to the underpinnings, dropping through to the underpinnings, dropping through to the underpinnings. It's like, what's that film? Inception, okay, where they go into a dream within a dream within a dream within a dream. They go deeper. When I'm working with people, when I'm coaching people, I'm often, see, for me, cognitive restructuring is a relatively superficial thing. It's not getting into the deep underpinnings. It's like the first layer dream, cognitive restructuring. It's moving the deck chairs around on the Titanic. Okay, it's more useful than that. That's unfair. But what we want to do is we want to drop through into the underpinnings. But in order to do this, you need to know that you are not the semantic material that sits underneath. You are not your values. Here's another metaphor I'll share with you. We human beings, we're like a musician. But we're like a musician that's learned a repertoire of tunes that we learn to play on our own neurology, on our own mind-body system. We learn to play this repertoire of tunes. And then we mistake the tunes for being who we are. We mistake the repertoire for being who we are. We forget that we are the player of the tunes. We forget that we learnt those tunes in the first place, and we forget that we can actually start to improvise like a jazz musician. We don't need to stay to the rigid structure of those tunes. We can improvise around them. We forget that we can learn new tunes at a deep level, new ways of seeing, new ways of being. And we forget that we can choose to drop certain tunes from our repertoire. Okay, so you are the magician. Sorry, I meant to say musician, but maybe that is an apt slip of the tongue there. You are the musician, and likeness not the magician as well, who has incredible power to transform what it is that you can see. And you can see something here that a lot of people wouldn't be able to see. You can see there's something driving this pattern. What I would invite you to do is look at that and ask yourself the question, how much do I want to change that? How much am I willing to commit to changing that? Okay? Am I willing to take that as a developmental edge? My developmental edge is to transcend this unquestioned rule, thou shalt not conform, so as I can be free from it. Right? What is it like to always conform to the rule, I mustn't conform? What is it like? Seriously, I'm not joking, that's not a cheap reframe. Okay, what is the implication? What is the cost of always conforming to the rule, I must not conform? What has the cost for you in life been? Is it moving you towards the life that you want or keeping you from the life that you want? Because if you think that it's keeping you from the life that you want, recognize that you have the power to transcend that. It's just an idea. Okay, your mind has breathed life into it and has been taking it really seriously, but it's just an idea. And what is everything that you are beyond the idea, I mustn't conform? And if you were to become truly independent from that rule, so that you can connect to the I that chooses and really start creating in your life, what would you do differently? Okay, so I'm going to close this off now, but if you have been watching this, and if you're the person that wrote this email and you got some goodness from it or want some further clarification, please do engage me via the comments section. If you're watching this video and you didn't ask that question, but you got some goodness from it, please do hit the thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, that's something that's worthwhile for you to do. I'm signing off, but until we speak again, keep on using your mind to shape your life.